What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL 2021-22 pre-season video. And FPL, believe it or not, has already been out for 3 weeks. Obviously, it's been a bit overshadowed by all the Euros, but that is finished now. So we are just looking ahead. There's a month to go until the game week 1 deadline. And obviously, FPL kicks off. The Premier League season kicks off. So because it's been like 3 weeks since I last looked at my draft, and obviously I've been concentrating on the Euros and stuff like that, I thought I'd come back to it, make a few changes and talk about it in this video before we start more of the kind of best players, midfielders, forwards, and take a more look at fixtures and stuff like that in other videos. There's going to be plenty of content to come from now until game week 1 for sure. So subscribe if you're new around here, hit the like button if you enjoy it, and let's jump into it. Okay, so we'll start off with defense. I just also want to talk about the formation, the players on the bench as well before we get into the main team. So as of right now, I'm still on a 3-4-3. I don't really see me changing that. The only thing that might make me rethink is Sancho. So I'm waiting for his price to come in. I've already got if Sancho is the same price as Rashford, here is my draft, like ready to go. So as soon as he's priced by FPL, and by the way, it's probably going to be straight after his medical. So he has his medical, he signs officially for Man United, and bam, FPL get him in. They've probably already got a price in mind. So I'll talk about that when he signs officially. But for now, I'm still on the 3-4-3, and it would take a lot for me to change for that, for all the reasons I spoke about in yesterday's video about the fact that you can have better players on the bench and stuff like that, and how valuable 4.5 million midfielders are. I don't believe in all this, 6.5 million defender versus 6.5 million mid. The value, it's just different because 4.5 million defenders are so useful. So I've actually gone for Mankilo on the bench. Now, as always, this far out, don't panic too much about the specific players in the bench fodder positions, right? So Gilmour is the 4.5 million midfielder at Norwich. It could be Brownhill at Burnley. It probably won't be a Brighton player because I've got Steele on the bench because Ryan has now left Brighton. So as of right now, they've only got the 2 goalkeepers listed, Sanchez and Steele. So if Sanchez was to get injured, you'd have the backup keeper ready. And I just think Brighton's opening fixtures are so good that I definitely want Sanchez there. And I put a 4 million defender, and it could be any of the others, right? Of course, if Brandon Williams at Man United moves to a Premier League club and it looks like he's going to get minutes, of course, he would be straight in. But I've just gone for the 4 million now because I like to do that early on to then see just how much I can put into my first 11 and then see if there's a way to strip it back. Obviously, if there's a player that I can remove and get 0.5 million from, then yeah, of course, I'll upgrade Mankilo. But for now, I like to put as much money into the first 11 as possible. And Ben White, again, is just cover for a Brighton player. I could hold on to him if he goes to Arsenal. That seems to have died down a little bit now. But it could be Lamptey, it could be Veltman, whoever's 4.5 million, basically. There's a few players in this draft that I just don't see changing unless they're not ready for the start of the season, aka some England players will now get an extended break before they're able to partake in pre-season training and all that kind of stuff as well. They'll probably miss a lot of the pre-season friendlies too, or obviously injuries, right? Some players are going to get injured randomly, or they may already be injured and then not become available. But Trent Alexander-Arnold and Luke Shaw are fairly nailed in this team, I would say. There's a lot of people making the case for 4.5 million defenders. I get that. I just think that looks really good. But when we get into the game and then you start wanting to upgrade to like 5.5, 6 million pound defenders and you're stuck with a bunch of 4.5s, you've got to make another change to get the money. I personally prefer just starting with one of the highest priced players, or the highest priced defender, which is Trent. And also, we know how good he can be. To be fair, the last few seasons, Liverpool defenders haven't really kicked in till later on, but there's not necessarily something that's affecting that. These things just happen. It could be that this year they kick on from the start. And if you think about the Liverpool squad, obviously there'll be a lot of teams where they've got players that went deep into the Euros. Trent was injured, so he didn't go with England. Salah, Firmino, Mane, they're already in pre-season training. Obviously, Jordan Henderson, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him back early so he can start building up his fitness because he hasn't played a full game, a competitive full game for a long time now, right? So I would expect to see him back. So I think Liverpool could hit the ground running, plus their fixtures are so good as well. Luke Shaw has to be in. I mean, he's just showed in this England shirt just how good he is, but we didn't need to see that. We already saw how good he was last year. He's creating plenty of chances. He is going to be the fullback outlet for Man United. They're not going to attack down the right with Wan-Bissaka. Obviously, if Sancho comes and plays there, then that's great. But from a fullback perspective, it is going to be Luke Shaw. We can see him getting on the end of shots, at the end of crosses as well now after his goal in the final. And Man United's fixtures are really good. So for 5.5 million, I just prefer him to Luka D. And I'm not ruling out Everton defenders for sure, but right now Luke Shaw is pretty much nailed for me. And then I've got Sofao in because he's a bit cheaper than Cresswell. We know he's nailed on. If we see that West Ham are going to a back five, all right, and David Moyes is going to deploy that back five at the start of the season, then Masuaku at 4.5 million could be a bargain, because we saw last year that Cresswell played left centre-back and then Masuaku was the left wing-back. And if that's the case, I'd probably go for him. But with Sofao, you know you're getting a nailed-on player, whether he plays right-back or right wing-back. He's going to be in the team. West Ham fixtures are decent. The defence is pretty good as well. So for 5 million, I like him for the opening set of fixtures. And I've got to be honest, a lot of the way the fixtures fall, an early wildcard, like I wildcard in game week 5 last year, I might last a little bit longer this year, but I think around game week 7 or 8 is there's a lot of fixture turns, right? Because Man City and Chelsea players don't even feature in my team right now. Is that going to happen for the rest of the season? Absolutely not. And some of these players that got really good opening fixtures, their fixtures start to turn as well. So I'm keeping that in mind, but you don't want to look too far ahead. There's no point in having a Chelsea and Man City player because in game week 10 they've got a good fixture. So much is going to happen in those first 10 game weeks. There's no point worrying about it now. So that's the defence. Let's look at the midfield. So coming on to the midfield, again, there's some players which I'm going to find difficult to leave out. Rafinha, you all know the reasons why for that. He was just so good last year. His underlying numbers are ridiculous. He's nailed on. He pretty much plays 80 to 90 minutes most games. Leeds are going to continue to attack. I really like him for 6.5 million. I thought he was going to come in at like 7 to 7.5, and therefore he is, to me, massively underpriced. I know Man United away is not an ideal starting fixture, but it is what it is, right? We know they're going to go for it. I think they drew 0-0 with Man United, and even in the, what was it, 6-2 loss, I think. Obviously, they still scored a couple of goals anyway, so we know what they can do. Fernandes and Salah are just such good captaincy options for the first 6 to 7 weeks. Like, I just don't see me not captaining one of those two, unless, of course, there is issues with injuries or whatever it might be. The problem that a lot of us are going to have to solve one way or another is game week 3. Now, I know we're like a month out from the game week 1 deadline. I'm already thinking about game week 3, but this is the kind of thing you've got to think about when you're building your squad, and that is captaincy. Because in game week 3, Man United play Wolves away. Now, that might be an okay fixture, right? We don't know how they're going to line up this year. We don't know how defensive they're going to be and all that good stuff. So that might be okay, but it's not an ideal fixture. And if you look at the underlying numbers from last year, Wolves' defence was actually pretty good in terms of expected goals conceded. So that won't be an easy fixture, an away game to Wolves. Liverpool, so Salah captain obviously game week 1 against Norwich almost certainly. They're playing Chelsea, right? I'm just looking at the fixtures here. So that's not ideal either. Man City play Arsenal. The one you really want is Harry Kane against Watford, right? That could be a goal fest, right? I know Watford, everyone's saying they defend well. This is the Premier League now. They're playing Spurs, they're playing Kane, they're playing Son. That's a difficult fixture. Now, of course, people are going to be saying, well, what if he's gone to Man City, etc.? I get that, and that will obviously require a big rethink if that happens. But right now, we have to just deal with the facts that we have, and that is that Spurs are playing Watford in game week 3, and that's probably the best game. If I look at other players I might have in my squad, it's West Ham attackers against Crystal Palace. Again, new manager there. How will they set up? They weren't great defensively last year under Hodgson. Will they get better under Vieira? Who knows? And then Leeds against Burnley. Again, Burnley were not good defensive either. We know them as this Sean Dyche, good defensive team, very hard to break down. But last year, they weren't that great. So maybe Rafinha could be a captain. But at that point, one thing I did last year was I always had pretty much, apart from 1 or 2 game weeks, the player that I thought was the best. And it's very difficult to get Kane in because then you have to drop one of Salah, Fernandes, or probably even Trent Alexander-Arnold to get him in. Is it worth that sacrifice for that one game week? Possibly it is, right? Just to have the best captain when other people are struggling to get him in. You could chop and change, so take some money out of Salah or Fernandes and put it into Harry Kane, but that requires 2 transfers, and then from game week 4, you probably want to reverse that transfer. It's just not worth it. I think there's a better solution to be had, and I'm not quite sure I've got it. But when I've gone through the whole team, I'll do some tinkering to see how we can fit Harry Kane in. So that is someone that I'm definitely thinking about. And then I've got Jota in. Now, you'll see in a minute with my forward line, I had a bit extra to spend on midfield versus my first draft 3 weeks ago. So Jota's in there just because Liverpool fixtures are so good. So I'm just going to bring them up here just to talk about them. So Norwich, Burnley, obviously that Chelsea game, which is hard. Then Leeds, Palace and Brentford. The first 6 are brilliant. After that, it gets a bit more tricky. Then they've got, in the next 4, they've got City, Man United and Brighton all there. Now, it doesn't mean you necessarily want to get rid of all your Liverpool players, but it is going to get a bit tougher for them. Maybe that's the point where I get rid of Jota. But again, is he worth it for the first few fixtures? That is the tough call, because when he plays, we know how good he is, but minutes are extremely important, right? We can say all the things we want about how they can score off the bench, he can score in 20 minutes, even if he only plays 60, he can do something. That is true, but a player that's on the pitch for longer, has got more of a chance of doing better. Even if the XG per 90 stats are good for Jota, he's not going to be on the pitch as long as someone who is on the pitch for the whole 90 minutes, right? Simple as that. So someone like Saka, for example, there's a lot of players under 7.5 or 7.5 and below that are possibly good options. Now, doesn't mean there are good options from day one, because Arsenal, like Saka, Pepe, etc., they play Brentford, but I think they've got Man City and Chelsea game week 2 and 3, so it's very difficult fixtures they've got. But going forward, they might be okay options. So having Jota in there lets you have him for the good fixtures, and then maybe you can drop him down to someone different. I don't want to start the season pre-planning loads of transfers, because in the first few weeks there'll be a lot of knee-jerking where we start seeing that, oh, this player started, I wasn't expecting that. This player isn't starting, I wasn't expecting that. This player looks really good. This guy's being transferred in by loads. I don't want to be priced out with him. And suddenly you're making transfers you'd never even thought of. So you don't want to pre-plan too much. But that Jota position, for the amount of players, 7.5 million and under, is pretty decent. So I really like the look of that midfield. Let's take a look at the strike force. So I may have succumbed to the Toney bandwagon, right? And I say bandwagon because he's 35% owned already. That may or may not go up or down. Well, it will go up or down, right, before the start of the season. Possibly it will go up a little bit more. I think, no matter what people say, people do get affected by what happens in pre-season. So if Toney goes and smashes a load in pre-season friendlies, it will go up, right? Even though that shouldn't really matter too much. Just really, I might talk about this on another video, but really quickly, my main things in pre-season, I want to see who's starting the most and also what formations and positions players are taking up. I won't really put too much emphasis on how many goals a player scores, but it does affect people, I know that. Now, they've got Arsenal at home, first game. Difficult, but it is in front of the home fans, which is good. And I think they're going to do, I wouldn't say they're going to do a Leeds, because Leeds were pretty good last year, right? But I do think they'll be comfortable. I don't think they're going to go straight back down by any means. And then you've got Palace, then you've got Villa in game weeks 2 and 3. The opening fixtures are not brilliant for Brentford, right? In the opening, 7, they play Arsenal, Brighton, Wolves, Liverpool and West Ham, and then it's Chelsea, and then it's Leicester. So in fact the first 9 are pretty difficult, but for 6.5 million it lets you do a lot else with the team. So for example, by downgrading, I think I had Wilson in there or Watkins at 7.5 million, it lets me go from someone like Harrison by stripping off another 0.5 on Menkilo up to Jota, and that is probably quite a big upgrade. If anything, I'd even want to find maybe another 0.5 million to get Grealish in there possibly if he stays at Aston Villa, because Aston Villa's opening 3 fixtures are so good. That's something I'm considering, but Toney obviously gives you another million. The flip side is, if I went for Jota to Harrison, is that a big downgrade? Possibly not, if Harrison continues to be absolutely nailed on this year. And then it lets you get a Premier League proven player, which also who also could have good fixtures, right? So Iheanacho, Watkins are just 2 examples at 7.5 million. There's a lot of good strikers that have played in the league, that have done well, that do have good underlying numbers as well. So is the 1 million saving worth it on Toney? That's something we'll look at when I do some tinkering in a minute. Possibly, right? And 35% ownership, if he bangs game week 1 with Palace and Villa to go, his price is only going to rise, right? And that'll be frustrating. So I'm thinking about it. The other 2 are Antonio and Calvert-Lewin. Again, will they change too much? I'm really interested to see what West Ham do in the transfer market in regards to a striker, because we know what Antonio's injury record is like, right? If he's fit for the start of the season, then he looks good. West Ham fixtures are decent. That's why I've got so far in. So just quickly bringing them up here. You got Newcastle away, Leicester at home, which isn't great, but then Palace, Southampton away, Leeds away, Brentford at home, all in the first 7. So West Ham's fixtures are really good. And Antonio is just great. He's just a great striker. And if he's the number 1 and he's fit, that looks good, right? And the other one's Calvert-Lewin. Now, I don't know. He's 28% owned, so he's nearly as popular as Toney. So I won't say that he's going under the radar, because he absolutely isn't. I don't know. I haven't seen a huge amount of Twitter teams recently with him. I'm not sure why that is, but I don't know. Benitez is in, right? People see him as a defensive manager, but surely Calvert-Lewin is playing through as the number 9, the main striker in that team still. Southampton, Leeds, Brighton, Burnley, Villa, Norwich in the first 6. It's about as good as it gets. The only thing that obviously downgrading him to like a Watkins or a Wilson or something like that is it would give me the 0.5 million to do Jota to Grealish. One thing I like about Aston Villa players, right, because the first 3 fixtures are brilliant and then it gets difficult. But the one thing is they have a good fixture in game week 3 against Brentford. Possibly that could be the captaincy. So it's Watford, Newcastle and Brentford. So Newcastle defence was not good last year. Don't see massive improvements this year, but we'll have to wait and see. And then 2 newly promoted clubs in the first 3. That's really good. But then it's Chelsea, Everton, Man United, Spurs. So I don't want to overload with Aston Villa players, but perhaps I'm ignoring them a bit too much. And someone like Grealish, maybe even Buendia, could they be a captaincy in game week 3? Possibly. But overall, I like the balance of the squad. Trent and Shaw look good. Fernandes, Salah are probably pretty much nailed on, as well as Rafinha. So, I mean, already we're like 4 weeks out from the season start, and I'm already saying there's like 5 players pretty much nailed in my team. That might change, but I think I'm going to find it difficult to move them on. So that's the team. I'm going to do a little bit of tinkering now if you want to stay and watch that. But right now, that is the draft that I'm working with. Okay, so this is the squad on the FPL page. Again, don't worry too much about captaincy and whatnot, because obviously I would change that before game week 1. In fact, it will just be Salah, almost certainly. So we'll save that. Okay, so yeah, this is the team. I'm only going to be quick here because obviously I've just gone through it in full. But like I said, Tony, is there a better striker, possibly proven Premier League for like kind of 7.5 or blah? I mean, 8 million, I've already got Calvert-Lewin. Obviously, you can have Bamford, who I've not really talked about too much. I just think Rafinha is such good value, and players like Ings as well. But realistically, I think the most I'd want to spend is 7.5. I've got Calvert-Lewin as the 8. I don't think I can stretch to another one. So, for example, we could go, probably not Chris Wood for 7 to start with, but Watkins with 3 really good starting fixtures. Callum Wilson's underlying numbers are pretty good. The fixtures aren't bad either to start. Watford, Leeds, Southampton, Villa, they're all pretty decent. We know he's on penalties as well, so I don't hate Callum Wilson as an option. But then you've got to shave $1 million off the team. Now, I've already got a 4 million defender slot taken. Trent and Shaw I don't really want to change. And I do think so far is pretty good value. I could go for so far down to a 4.5 like Fofana. Like, I think Fofana's good value, but I don't think he's such good value that he absolutely has to be in our teams. I think maybe that's how I kind of talked about him when I first saw the price reveal. I do think Fofana's underpriced, but I don't think he's like, Christ, he's got to be in our teams. Value. So far could go down to a 4.5, but realistically it's this Jota slot, right? I can go down to a Jota slot, sounds good. This a 6.5 million midfielder instead, obviously not 12.5. So Harrison is an option. That he's someone I had in my first draft. I don't mind him. I just think it's almost like psychological, right? Seeing that Man United away fixture twice in your team start off the season is not that great. But I don't see Everton at home as a 4 fixture difficulty rating. I think Everton defence is quite poor. Will Rafa Benitez make them tougher to beat? Possibly. But I trust Leeds, so I don't see that as a 4 fixture. Burnley, Newcastle, West Ham, Watford, they're all fairly good fixtures. Leeds opening 10 up until Norwich away aren't that bad. So Harrison is definitely an option. Obviously, you got Souček in there as well. Ward-Prowse, I'm not really a big fan of. Otherwise, you got players like Saka, but like I said just a minute ago, they got that Chelsea and Man City game in game week 2 and 3, so it's not ideal. So that's kind of why I like Jota just being there and then being able to downgrade him elsewhere. Otherwise, you go for an Aston Villa midfielder that's potentially not Jack Grealish, so Buendia is an option at 6.5. I actually think Traore at 6 is probably being overlooked a little bit. I do know that obviously if Buendia is there, which he is, and then Grealish also stays, then there's not too many slots. So it could be Grealish on the left, Buendia on the right, and then someone else in the middle. Possibly it could be Grealish moved to the middle. We don't know. But Traore got 7 goals, 7 assists last year. He's only 6 million. So an Aston Villa player for the first 3 might not be the end of the world. So someone like Buendia, for example, could come in. We know he's probably going to play, right? I'd be very surprised if they sign him and they put him on the bench. And that gives me Wilson instead. So Wilson and Buendia versus Tony and Jota. I'll say right now, if I knew they were all going to get 90 minutes, the Jota-Tony option, especially when Tony's on penalties, is probably the better one. But with Jota, we just don't even know if he's going to start, let alone how many minutes he's going to get when he does play. And I think that's the kind of, like, when I first saw the price, 7.5, it's like, yeah, he has to be in, but does he? And that's the kind of dilemma that I have right now. One quick thing, right? Let's just try and put Harry Kane in. I don't think it's possible in a 3-4-3. Not if you want Salah and Fernandes as well. Then you've got to make that choice. So we'll get rid of Wilson and we'll put Kane in. Like, you're having to make up 5 million straight away. I just don't think it's possible unless you play 4 at the back, or even maybe 5 at the back. Because even if you downgrade Buendia to a 4.5 million midfielder, let's just put anyone in. Let's just put Allen in, right? It doesn't really matter. You've still got to make up 3 million. So Trent down to a 4.5. Again, we'll just put anyone in for now. We won't think about it too much. So Cody, if I can actually click on that. Now, to make this better, what you would probably do is downgrade Shaw or Sofao. So if we put Sofao down to a 4.5 as well, then we can also upgrade Ayling. We can also upgrade Manquino to a 4.5 as well. So I'm just going to put in whoever for now. So you're going in with Kane, Salah and Fernandes, but you're having to play 4 at the back, and you've got like all 4.5s apart from Shaw. Now, there are a lot of 4.5 million defender options, so I'm not saying it's not a choice that could be made. But I just think flexibility-wise, having 2 4.5 million midfielders and 4 4.5 million defenders is just not ideal. Again, you could downgrade Shaw to a 5 and then upgrade one of the 4.5s to Sofao, and maybe that'd be a bit better. But it's just, is all that sacrifice worth it to get Kane for game week 3? It just might be. And that is the dilemma that I'm going to have for probably the rest of pre-season. But right now I'm liking my 4-3-3 draft, which basically lines up like this. So there we go. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Please do give it a like if you enjoyed it, and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get 200k by the start of game week 1. 250k would be nice, but let's start a little bit smaller with the 200 to basically get us started for the rest of the season. I am back in Ireland now, back home, back in the office making videos. I've been away in England for like the last 6 days. Obviously watching the semi-final at Wembley, which was great, then watching the final, etc., seeing family. So I wasn't able to do videos, and obviously the last one wasn't as great, but I've got my normal mic, my normal lighting, camera and stuff, so we'll be hitting it hard between now and the start of the season. If you've got any videos that you want to see me make, leave a comment below with that as well, and I'll go through them. I've already got a massive list, to be honest, of stuff that I want to do, but there might be some stuff that I haven't thought about, so leave me a comment below. And I thought, yeah, I'd just ease myself back in with a nice current draft video before we get into the good stuff for the rest of pre-season. So thank you for watching. Do give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and I'll catch you again soon.